Hello, everybody on the call. Thank you for joining us today. I know this is a pretty near and dear topic to most of us out there on the line. How is COVID impacting us, the financial turmoil that it's creating, a lot of the confusion that's going on just in the industry with, it seems like government's coming out every day with new regulations, changing what they said, changing how they're acting, how they're handling a lot of these situations. So we're hoping to get a little bit of clarity today. We're bringing on Craig Cody, who we've worked with in the past, to kind of handle and talk through some of this gray area. So the agenda for today, and this entire webinar will be recorded. So upon completion, when we're done with this, though, about 2 hours afterwards, the recording will come to you in an automated email. So if that does not come out, please reach back to us. We will be glad to share that with you. Also, during the time of this, there's a question box. So feel free to support any questions that you have. We'll answer those throughout the webinar and try to get those towards the dedicated section at the end. There will be a couple handouts that'll come out later on in this webinar as well to hopefully assist you in your business. So without further ado, this is the agenda for today. We're going to talk through some of these SBA loans, the PPP being one of the biggest ones, the Payment Protection Program, how the government stimulus might impact your business, federal incentives that are available out there, how you guys may or may not be able to negotiate with the loan providers you're currently using, and those that maybe you need to seek for further funding, and then any additional financial aid that might come up, and then we'll get to a Q&A. So the speaker for today, Craig Cody, as I said earlier. Craig, if you want to, I won't hold you back on this. If you'd like to share, talk about yourself, how you're handling what you're seeing in the industry right now, and then we'll dive into the material.
Sure, yes. Well, we're a firm based out of New York, but we have clients all over the country. So we've spent a lot of time, I would say probably in the last 2 weeks. This bill was signed, I believe, on March 26th. So we've spent a lot of time doing the research, coming up with, or trying to come up with answers to some of the gray areas. The slides here will take you through that, and I'll expand on them as need be. And hopefully you walk away from this with some good knowledge that you could use, then go out and get some PPP money.
Perfect. All right, Craig. Well, we'll start with the Payment Protection Program. So a lot of this content, as we're going through it, is all content that's readily available out there on the internet. Kind of just pulling them through as points of topic to kind of guide you out there on the call to understand some of these pieces. Now, different sites will vary, and as we stated earlier, the content seems to change day to day. So we'll just kind of look at this from a high overview and a discussion more so than following these bullet points. But anybody out there that has questions during these, please feel free to share those and express those questions. So Craig, let's just start off with the PPP and how eligibility is working.
Okay.
How are you seeing out there?
Okay, so it's mainly basically with for companies with less than 500 employees. So for purposes of what we're talking about today, we'll talk about the typical small business with less than 500 employees. That also includes sole proprietors, independent contractors. If there's any gig economy workers out there, self-employed people. So it is meant to cover those people and their employees. And the whole idea behind this is to keep people from going on unemployment and keeping your business really ready to start operating once all these stay-at-home rules are suspended. So that what the government really wants is the economy was rocking and rolling, and they wanted to kind of just get back to where it was once they open things up. So it's mainly for the small businesses out there, like most of the people that are listening here.
Awesome.
So that's eligibility. You also have to, can we go into the next slide a second?
Yeah.
So that's the eligibility, and who's entitled. What are you entitled to? So you're entitled to basically borrow up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll expenses, capped at $10 million. Okay, so basically there's a formula, and we're going to give you an Excel sheet where you could pop in a bunch of numbers and come up with that. But there's a formula that includes payroll, sick pay, if employer pays health insurance, employer provided, retirement plan money, and state unemployment taxes. If you add all that up, you would have to subtract out anyone that, if somebody makes over $100,000, you'd have to subtract out the excess. That gives you your annualized number, and then you divide that by 12 and you come up with your average monthly payroll expense. So let's just say that average monthly payroll expense is $50,000. So you take that 50 and multiply it by 2.5. So the maximum loan that you can get is $125,000. So everything that everyone's doing now is really geared on how much of a loan you can take. All right. The purpose of the loan is to cover 8 weeks of payroll expenses, which starts the day that the money is actually hit your bank account. And there's money also set up in there to go towards rent payments, interest on various debt, utilities. They talk about transportation, but we haven't gotten any guidance on transportation. You can apply for this as long as you had employees on February 15th of 2020. If you were in operation for all of 2019, you would use your numbers from 2019, and it covers the period from February 15th through June 30th. And what that means is, based on the information that's out there right now, if you get one of these PPP loans, that 8-week period really needs to start by May 1st. So you could use that money and pay it out before June 30th. Come June, and hopefully we'll have information on this sooner than later, you'll be able to apply to have this loan forgiven. All right. And if you follow the rules and you pay the right payroll, okay, and that means basically if you had 6 people working for you on June 15th, you need to have 6 people working for you when you start paying these people. And if you do that, they'll forgive a portion of that loan. If you do it correctly, you'll cover all your payroll for 8 weeks. You'll have money to pay your rent and your utilities. And if the numbers work out perfect, they'll forgive the whole amount. If they don't work out perfect, and maybe you got a little bit more money than you actually paid out, that will turn into a loan. It'll be payable over 2 years at about 1%. Right? There's no personal guarantees involved with these loans. Basically, you just have to fill out an application. They're typically done online and send in to the bank. Depending on the bank, they ask a lot of different questions, but typically they're asking for your payroll reports, your 940s, your 941s, W-2s, and they typically want something that shows that you had employees on February 15th. So that's what the loan is supposed to be for. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, so let's talk about, some people may have jumped the gun and either applied for other aid or still waiting on their checks. So maybe go through, what if they did do that? How does the PPP fit in? Okay,
so this is the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and I believe they've updated this site a number of times since they first started. When people first applied, it was a huge application. They wanted a lot of information. They've since streamlined it, all right? They've also made a lot of changes in it. So typical, a disaster loan, you apply for it. They give you a lump sum of money, and you're supposed to use it to keep your business afloat during bad times. What they decided to do here is they were going to give a $10,000 grant, and if you got that grant, it was going to offset the forgivable portion of your PPP loan. And then they were going to give you whatever the loan that they deemed you were fit for. What wound up happening, because the response was overwhelming, is they and we're still not sure how, they decided that grant was now going to be changed. They were now going to give you a grant of up to $1,000 per employee that you had on the payroll at February 15th. So if you had 5 employees, the grant was now going to be $5,000 and not $10,000. In addition to that, what it appears that they're doing is, typically in the past, if they were going to give you a loan, they would give you a lump sum loan. You pay it back over the time period. In this case, it's a 30-year loan. But it looks like what they're doing now is they're parceling this money out in 2-month tranches. So if they determine that you're supposed to get $15,000 a month, well, they're going to give you $30,000, and then in 2 months, if you're still not working, they're going to come back and give you another $30,000 instead of giving you a whole bunch of money up front. This can be applied in addition to the PPP. If you've gotten the grant or the loan before you actually apply for the PPP, you need to add that to your PPP application. So this is kind of a straightforward one, but it is a very slow process. So, this is probably, if you haven't applied for this and you've been injured, you should, and you're probably not going to see the money for a while.
Okay. Let's talk about some other additional SBA loans. These are just ones that, again, quickly searching, you can find some of these, but can you talk to some of these pieces that may be available or options for those on the phone?
Yeah, so the bridge loans are basically for somebody that already has a relationship with an SBA lender. It doesn't really pertain to most people. So it's about $25,000. I haven't seen any of those. The EIDL loan advance we talked about, that's what was originally going to be $10,000, and they just changed it to $1,000 per employee. So that's originally when you applied, they said you apply and you'll get this advance in 3 days. That hasn't happened. This money does not need to be paid back. And then the SBA debt relief, okay, is the SBA is going to automatically pay principal, interest, and fees on current SBA loans. So like many lenders out there right now, if you go to a bank and say, you've been affected, you'd like to work out some kind of deferment, the SBA is also doing the same thing.
So these, for anybody on the call, if you guys want to take a screenshot, go through some of these are some resources that we found very helpful in just kind of putting something together. I know prior to hopping on this with Craig, I wasn't the most understanding of what was out there, but a lot of these resources are available free for you guys. So if you want to take a screenshot, and Craig, I don't know if you have additional context behind these phone numbers for the loan service office.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I've heard people being on hold for hours and getting disconnected. I think the SBA normally funds about 30,000 loans a year. I don't know how many millions of applications they've received. So they're totally overwhelmed. And that was part of the reason with the PPP loan that the government wanted the banks involved so they could get the money out faster. It didn't quite work that way. We'll see, if it turns around, but getting the money out has been slow. People are getting approved, but as of 2 days ago, today supposedly they're going to meet their $350 billion max, but the other day, $140 billion worth of loans were approved, and only $7 billion was dispersed. So it's going to take a little bit of time.
Okay. Well, before moving on into the federal incentives portion, there is one question in regards to the PPP. What happens if we had not had any employees on February 15th? Can I apply as a self-employee, and how?
Yes, so if you're a sole proprietor and you were working, yes, you can apply. What they want, so applications opened up for the regular PPP loan on April 3rd. Applications opened up for sole proprietors, which are, either single member LLCs or somebody that's just on their own, on April 10th. So the process for applying there is you need a bank statement that shows you were in business. If we go to one of the handouts, I think I have that information.
Yeah.
On that.
Is that the PPP loan? I will.
No, that's not it. Let me go and bring that up. So I'll give you a little bit more background on that. So they just came out with guidance on these sole proprietor loans. Okay. So basically the way this works is, well, the regular loan process is when you're submitting your application or right after, they want your payroll reports, your W-2s, your 941s and stuff like that. A typical sole proprietor that doesn't have any employees doesn't have any of that. So the question was, how is this going to be documented? So basically what they want when you apply is they want a completed 2019 Schedule C from your tax return. So you'll have to take your profit and loss, enter it on the Schedule C, and that Schedule C will have to be submitted along with your application. Now, it does not say you have to have a filed return. It just says that they want a copy of the Schedule C. They also want bank statements, invoices, or books that show that your business was open on February 15, 2020. And then if you did have employees in addition to yourself, then they want the regular payroll tax returns and stuff like that. So if you're a sole proprietor, you fill out the same form, but where they talk about payroll, you would take your Schedule C net income and divide it by 12, and that's the number that you put down. So if the number happens to be $100,000 worth of net profit, then 1 month's payroll is, and let's not talk about health insurance or anything like that, is about $8,300. So you'll get 2.5 times $8,300. And that would be the loan amount that you're going to request. So that's on the application. But they started taking these applications on Friday. They just came out with this guidance last night.
Okay, so fairly new then.
Yes.
But at least they're supporting it.
Right, it's just, they're a little slow.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit about these federal incentives, the CARES Act and the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. What are you seeing or hearing on these, and how are they working?
Well, we haven't seen anybody that had to deal with this yet. Most people, at some point, they've laid off their staff. If somebody was sick, they could actually fall under this expanded definition. Now, there was talk that if you had less than 50 employees, you could file that, this should not pertain to you and you could opt out of it. But what was supposed to happen is that if somebody got sick or came down with the virus, or was caring for somebody that came down with the virus, or was caring for a child that was out of school, then the first 10 days they were out, they were on their own, and then they could get up to 80 hours of paid sick leave. All right. So that's 2 weeks worth of sick leave. And then it just went on from there. But we haven't seen anyone take advantage of this for a couple of reasons. Number one is unemployment was changed. So in addition to what you get from state unemployment, the federal government is kicking in another $600 a week. So there's a lot of people that they're making more money now sitting at home than they were when they were working. So this doesn't really kick in. There is an employee retention credit and there's an employer payroll tax deferral. The retention credit's a little complicated. You'd probably be better off speaking with your C.P.A. about that. The way the tax deferral works is that if you're paying employees and that the employer portion of FICA tax, which is about 7.65%, can be deferred from the period of March 12th I'm sorry, not March 12th, March 27th through the end of the year. But if you take a PPP loan, once that PPP loan is forgiven, the deferral period ends. So you would have to start paying your FICA taxes at that point. Any FICA taxes that were not paid would then be paid over the next 2 years. So once again, it's a little bit more complicated to talk about. That's something you should definitely speak with your CPA about. But it is out there and it is available.
All right, let's go into a little bit. I'm sure this is one that everybody's been working with their loan providers, but do you have any advice or conversational structure, things that you've seen or you've dealt with that can maybe those on the call can leverage to either get better rates or to understand what options they have?
Yeah, so I haven't seen anybody get a better rate. There are people that, so there's been, I'll call guidance given to landlords, so they can't evict you. But what they can do is they could defer your rent, or they could agree to defer rent for say up to 3 months. And then that rent gets paid back over, I believe it's 24 months starting January 1st of 2021. So that's deferment of rent. Then there's loan forbearance or deferment, where they also kick that back until you're back at work, or there's a certain period of time. So I think most lenders, from what I've heard, are eager to help everybody out because they know what's going on. If you have a loan and you're having any kind of trouble, paying that loan, you should definitely reach out to your bank or your lender.
All right, and some of these that I know the state one's probably a difficult one, just being located in an individual state versus the 50 out there. But some of these things that we were finding, I know tax is one of the big things that you're participating in. How does that extension, the tax deadline, impact?
So what they've done is they've just, in my world, we don't use the term extension because you have to file for an extension. So what they did is they just pushed the deadline from April 15th to July 15th. So basically everything that was due on April 15th is now due on July 15th, no need for an extension. I don't know of any states that haven't fallen in line. I'm pretty sure last I checked, which was a couple of days, that there was a few stragglers out there that hadn't fallen in line. But as far as I know, the states have pushed their deadlines. And this is pretty much, other than payroll taxes, for all different types of personal and corporate taxes that would have been due on April 15th.
Okay.
So there's no penalties if you pay, if you normally would have paid a balance due on April 15th. If you don't pay until July 15th, you will not be penalized.
Nice. And then for anybody out there that's on the call, maybe look through this link. There is some state-based assistance based on each one of these states offering something on top, but it's genuinely individual to that area.
Right. There were some nice ones, and the ones I've heard about are all, they're gone already. But like, I think it was Maryland was offering a $10,000 grant to help get your employees situated to work from home and stuff like that. So that was to the people that jumped on it really quick.
Gotcha. And then for anybody that's out there on the call currently, we have some handouts. So if you navigate over, you should be able to download these files.
Sure.
So the first one, if you want to walk through the intention behind these, I know they're very helpful, and they're very helpful actually.
Sure. So one is the COVID loan or grant calculator. I call it the loan calculator. That's how to determine what your average monthly payroll expense is, right? The interesting thing about it is almost every bank is calculating it a different way, all right? So it's just to be used as a guide. Some banks have their own, most banks don't. But you could use that as a guide to see, okay, how much am I eligible for? So I know what my numbers are when I go to apply. and what should I reasonably expect to be forgiven. And this loan is what we call self-certifying loan. So other than the documents you prepare, there is not going to be somebody checking through it. We believe the devil's going to come around when it's time for loan forgiveness, and that's where they're going to ask for, basically everything they could get their hands on. What we're recommending is if you do get a loan, that you deposit that money into a separate account, so it's much easier to track the money coming out and where it's going, because 75% of that money has to be used on payroll, and only up to 25% can be used for rent or utilities. So you want to make sure you keep track of it, and so it's going to be easy to give the government the documentation. It's actually going to be, the bank is going to be accepting the documentation for forgiveness.
All right. And then
the PPP accounting tips are basically, just some ideas that we've put together that you should do, such as having a separate loan, how you should treat that money, making sure you keep track of what you're spending, and have all that documentation ready, so when it's time to apply for forgiveness, which is going to be right around the corner, you'll have everything you need and you get it done, because you want to get this loan forgiven. That's the beauty of it.
awesome. And then you also, I know we were talking about it yesterday, but as a benefit to anybody that's out there or anything, you created a crisis site just to kind of keep people updated as to trends in the industry and what's coming out of this whole COVID situation.
Correct. Yes, we're sending out emails on a fairly regular basis as we come up with, things that we believe are important for people to know about. So if you go to the website, there's a box you could fill in your name and your email address. We'll get you on that list, and we will send out, you'll be included when we send out the various emails.
Awesome. All right, well, I will open up for any questions now that you guys may have and everything. So in the background, while you guys are collecting these questions, I'll have Craig hop on and just provide any additional advice, anything outside of this that he finds valuable or thinks that may be of value to you.
Well, our primary focus when we work with new clients in our office is tax planning. So, and tax planning is all about, keeping more of what you make. So, potentially depending on, your business and circumstances, you may see a decrease in revenue during this period. So tax planning becomes more and more important, so you could really, leverage the tax law and keep more of what you make. So that's what we do. You can go to our website and find some more information about us. I also have a podcast where we talk about tax planning and how it affects business owners. This is a podcast really geared towards dentists, but dentists are business owners like everybody else. So there's some pertinent information for everyone.
All right. So Craig, Robert has a question here. This goes back to the PPP. So they're a partnership LLC. They have 3 owners and 1 full-time employee and 1 part-time employee. Does the PPP cover the payments to the owners or just the employees?
Yes, it does cover the payments to the owners. So, and that's where the guidance that came out on the sole proprietorships yesterday actually gave us a little bit of guidance on the partnerships. So basically, you would calculate how much in W-2 wages you pay to your employees. Then you'd look at your net income. Let's just assume it was divided by 3, okay? So if it was $300,000 net income, there were 3 equal partners, that would be $100,000 each that you would include in your calculation. So, so you would add that to your wage number to figure out what the amount of the loan that you should be eligible for. There are not a lot of people that applied early for this loan that were part of partnerships that did not include that. And unless there's a way to amend this application, they will wind up getting, not getting that money. So you just count it just like you would. You take your net income, divide it by the number of partners, cap it at $100,000 each, and add that to your wages.
All right. Jason would like to know, so he's currently starting the disaster one, the EIDL. It's a separate application, or does the PP loan application also do that? If
No,
not,
no.
where do?
So if you go to SBA.gov, and it's under SBA loans, there's the PPP and there should be the EIDL loan. It's a very quick application. The two things you will need, or three things you will need from your business for 2019 are your gross revenue, your cost of goods sold, and I think they may ask you for your net income, but I'm not 100% sure. And based on that, and I believe your NAICS code, which you would get from your tax return, is how they determine what or if they are going to grant you and loan you. But if you're doing an EIDL loan now, in all likelihood, it's going to be some time before you get funded.
Okay.
And there is no personal guarantee on that either, I believe up to $200,000. So most people are not going to have a personal guarantee on it. That's a 30-year loan at about 3.75%, which is pretty much free money.
So Sergio, I may need a little bit more understanding, but he's curious if the programs are, if there's any tax on them, are they taxable or are they free of tax?
Good question. We believe it's going to be free of tax, but we're not sure. So when they forgive it, it's not going to be taxed. That part will not be taxable, okay? But we're not exactly sure how they're going to do it, because if none of it's taxable and then you get to actually deduct the cost of your salaries, that's kind of like double dipping. So you're not getting the income, but you're getting to, and they're giving you the money, and then you're getting to write off the salaries. We should have further guidance on that, hopefully by April 26th.
Okay. This one is more for almost a startup. So they haven't filed their tax return because it's a year-old company. Would it be possible to obtain any financial help if I'm sole proprietor and can show that my corp has been active and profitable according to bank statements?
Okay, so if you're a corporation, you're not a sole proprietor. So if you're a corporation, it's going to be based on W-2 income. If you are indeed a sole proprietor, maybe you get 1099s, or you just get paid, then you're going to have to figure out what your profit and loss looks like for 2019 and include that with your application. So there's a lot of people that think, well, I'm just a sole proprietor because I'm a one-man S corporation. No, a one-man S corporation is an S corporation, and the loan is based on your W-2 wages. So unfortunately, if you did not take wages in 2019, you only took distributions, it may make it difficult.
All right. Just making sure if there's any other questions that are out there for right now. I can open up a poll while a couple of these other questions pop up, just to get an understanding of who all is out there on the call. So the calculator that I'm using during the application is asking if I am an LLC, sole proprietor, or C Corp. I'm actually an S Corp. What do I use?
So the application I saw also has S corporation in there. And that is I'm just going to open it up on my screen, make sure I'm not losing my mind. Bear with me a second. And most of this, everyone that I know of is done online. So on the actual Paycheck Protection Program application, the first line says sole proprietor, partnership, C Corp, S Corp, or LLC. So you would check one of those.
Okay. There is some follow-up. This is a calculator for a certain bank, and they're apparently not using the S Corp. Is there one that they can lump it into, or is that one that they need to specifically maybe reach out to the bank to?
I would reach out to the bank. I mean, because they have a calculator and they have the application. And it may say corporation, but you should reach out to the bank.
Okay.
The actual SBA application, which I would believe they would need because this is part of the SBA, does have this corporation.
Okay. And then how about, you've gone over kind of the timeliness of these, and it's a slow process. Thomas would like to know if they applied with one bank for the payment protection program, but haven't heard anything back yet, is it okay for them to apply with another bank?
Good question. So there's a lot of people that have applied with various types of lenders and have heard nothing. Okay. And now they're seeing that other banks, or like, I think PayPal just started taking applications. Intuit QuickBooks just started taking applications. So they're like, maybe I should just apply here. I don't know what the correct answer is. I do know that a lot of people are actually figuring, I have not heard from my bank. I can't reach my bank, so I'm going to apply someplace else. I do know that the SBA will not give you two loans. But I guess there is some inherent risk in applying two different places, but you got to weigh that against potentially, having no idea whether your bank has actually submitted your application.
Okay.
And there's a lot of concern for that for a lot of people.
Okay. Yeah, I know it seems like there's a need for that money now. So pushing it through multiple lenders might offer you that flexibility to get that money sooner.
Right.
So you're suggesting that they're not going to give you two SBA loans, but there's no real insight on how they interact, if you'll be penalized or anything like that.
Right. I mean, I don't think you'll be penalized. I think, potentially, if I guess both applications hit the SBA at the same time, it could create, an issue. But I would imagine if, one gets approved and then there's another one comes through, they'll just disapprove it. But that's just a guess.
Okay.
But I do know of people that are actually applying to a second bank because they have not heard from their bank. And these may be big banks like Chase and stuff like that.
Yes, that was one of the specific ones that was used.
Yeah, but if you haven't applied, I think you should definitely apply as long as you've been affected. Okay, I don't know of any business owner that hasn't been affected.
Right. So, is there any validity to this? We were talking about the big banks and everything. One gentleman, Thomas, mentioned that his accountant told him that all the big banks really aren't being responsive, but people are having better luck with small banks.
Yes, that's what I've heard also.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, unless there's any other questions out there on the line, I'm not seeing any or anything, but we do appreciate the time that you've spent today with us, and hopefully it's answered some of these questions or helped get a little bit of guidance on where we're going. Again, the webinar will be available. It's a recording as we speak. So once we close down and everything's done, it'll ship off to your email about 2 hours after for the service, just to to get the recording available, and then it'll come to you in an automated email. If that doesn't come through to you, feel free to respond to us. Here's our email and everything. If it doesn't come through, and I'll be more than happy to send it over. It doesn't hurt me at all, and we're here to support you guys in this struggle against COVID. So if you have any topics, anything that you'd like to hear from us in the future, just to help with your business, help in what we can, please let us know. And we do appreciate everything that you have, everything that you do, and we do wish that you guys stay in good health and stay safe out there.
Yeah,
So,
and I will say, being from New York and in New York, and having people that have been in the hospitals and work there, this stuff is bad stuff. So be safe.
thank you very much. Well, thank you again, Craig.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care.